Welcome back, brothers and sisters. I am Braden. This guy over here is Tim, and this is Second Legacy, and thank you so much for stopping by. Now, previously, you might know me from Langley Outdoors Academy, my channel, and you might know him from Military Arms channel, but we have come together in Second Legacy because this has a very important purpose to pass the blessing of the Second Amendment along to the next generation through deep, in-depth discussions, which can go a little bit longer, but it gets to the bottom point of preserving freedom, and we can do it, and we will do it every single day. But in order to preserve freedom, sometimes we have to talk about people who don't like freedom too much. So I've got some clips that we're going to play for Gavin Newsom. But before we get into those, Tim, you got anything to say before we talk to the Gavster?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're going to dive into today is the whole notion of our rights and why we even have a Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is critical to the functioning of our republic. You take away the Second Amendment, the rest of our rights start to fall. And yes, that's speculation because it hasn't happened. But there's a reason why the founders made the Second Amendment the Second Amendment. It wasn't the First Amendment because they thought we should first have the right to speech, to say what's on our mind. But should that fail, if things should become tyrannical, we had the Second Amendment to keep the power of the government in the hands of the people. And some folks might find that to be unsavory and think that, oh my gosh, that just seems, just so horrible. You got to keep in mind, freedom isn't free. And freedom requires constant maintenance and defense. And it's so easy. It's like sand. It can slip through your fingers. All you have to do is nothing, and you'll lose your freedom. Then you have clowns like Mr. Newsom that seem to think that our rights aren't really rights at all. If you could play number one, Mr. Producer, let's have a listen to what this guy has to say.
It's not understood by the ideologues, and that's what we're up against. The history-only ideologues that go back to, well, their selected history of what the world looked like in 1790, when there were, what, 4 million people living in America. Biggest city in America, New York, I think had maybe 33,000 people. Predominantly rural, farmers. This history-only approach, you're seeing it over and over.
We could dive into this clip alone for so long. I know there's a lot of stuff we're going to talk about, but just on a high level, for everyone out there watching, if you're ever going to send a clip of a man to anyone you know, that would be it. Because he quite literally just said, well, this history-only approach, what is this, 1790, when we only had 300,000, 4 million people in the country? Well, now we have 330 million, so does that mean we don't have rights anymore? Because if our rights have population caps, I missed that part in the entire thing, because I'm pretty sure two things that don't have anything to do with our rights is population and time. Just saying, our rights are forever. They are in the Bill of Rights. It is a right. It's not a right until we reach certain growth levels. But that's just like one of the things. I mean, I'm gonna have a conniption. Please, Tim, jump in.
I know. Just listening to this man speak can cause an aneurysm because, I mean, so let me get this straight. The concept of freedom in 1790 isn't the same concept in 2023. I'm sorry, did freedom change all of a sudden? It's like his argument. I understand what he's trying to go with this. He's trying to claim that the Second Amendment no longer serves a practical purpose. And
absolutely,
I would beg to differ. We need our right to self-defense more so now than we ever have in the past. We currently face threats globally, as we always have since our founding. Since 1776 to 2023, this nation has faced constant threats. We were born in war, unfortunately. That's just a reality of how the world works. And we have had to fight wars to maintain our freedom and the freedom of our allies. And we can only do that if we have the means to defend ourselves and our nation and our liberty. And the Second Amendment obviously was purposely put into the Bill of Rights to maintain that. And we're going to go down that rabbit hole a little bit further because Mr. Newsom really, maybe he's just a victim of our public education system. I don't know. But boy, his grasp of history is rather appalling. And I think it's funny. Not only did he apparently state that freedoms have population caps, but he also admitted that rural folks like myself tend to be more peaceful.
I mean, like I said, we could break down this clip for eons just because there's so much in there that is A, incorrect, B, not founded in our history and is a misinterpretation of our history, and C, just plain silly. But we have even more from the Gavster, and then we're going to hit some little history, which teaches you why we have these things. But it wouldn't be a perfect setup without Gavin Newsom doing it for us, which is the ultimate irony. Mr. Producer, could you hit number 9 and then we will get it?
Promote JR-15s so that young children, babies, can learn the muscle memory that is required when they're old enough or perhaps unfortunate enough to be in the possession of a weapon of mass destruction, an AR-15 type platform.
It hurts. It hurts so bad. So not only, Tim, let me just hit a few points. Not only is an AR-15 a weapon of mass destruction, because I'm pretty sure that those would be like nuclear weapons, biological weapons, ICBMs.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure.
Anything that's unaimed. A rifle is a precision instrument. It's not a weapon of mass destruction.
It is literally defined as a small arms. I mean, that is literally what we're talking about. That's just the first thing. And the second thing, which we're about to hit really deep, is Gavin Newsom's going down the road of the idea that children would be involved in any type of education and safety and awareness and knowledge, which prevents accidents, which prevents catastrophes from occurring, is just beyond the pale. And any country that would do anything like that would just be perverse, as he has said in multiple occasions. But one thing that the Gavster, seems to forget, we have something called the Civilian Marksmanship Program, which had a very specific purpose. Tim, you want to jump on that?
Absolutely. So first of all, I want to make sure that you guys heard what he said. So babies have muscle memory. I don't know anybody giving AR-15s to babies, but okay, Mr. Newsom, we're training babies to have muscle memory. The CMP, the Civilian Marksmanship Program. So it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Our nation was born in war. We had to fight for our freedom. That's the only way the United States could have been established. We had to throw off the chains of tyranny, get rid of the king, and establish our republic. We had to do that through the application of force. And to maintain our freedoms throughout all these generations, we've had to use force to maintain our sovereignty and our freedoms. And the CMP was founded in 1903. And what is the Civilian Marksmanship Program, the CMP? Well, basically, it was designed to train the next generation of soldier. And so what the CMP does, and it's primarily focused on training youth, not babies, Mr. Newsom, youth, people that are actually old enough to understand safety, how to use a sight, or how to use sights, sight picture, sight alignment, how to use red dots, how to safely manipulate a firearm. This is something our own government established by an act of Congress in 1903, so we could train our youth so that should they find themselves in that unfortunate situation, I would agree with him on that point. I don't like sending teenagers to war any more than anybody else does, but we've had to do it to maintain our liberty. If they find themselves in that situation, we have produced the best riflemen the world has ever seen throughout the entire existence of our nation. This is how the Marines got the nickname Devil Dogs. We have literally worn out enemy combatants simply because Kentucky backwood boys like Carlos Hathcock, who is one of the most accomplished snipers in American history from Vietnam, he knew Kentucky windage. Tennessee or Kentucky, I forget which state he was from, but he was from a southern state. But anyway, so Mr. Hathcock learned how to shoot as a child, and he carried that through, from hunting and growing up in a rural area. And then by the time he was in Vietnam, he already had the skills that he needed. And so that's what the CMP was established for, was so that our nation could create Carlos Hathcocks. So you could get proper instruction on how to safely use a firearm, which is good instruction. This is something I believe should be taught in every school, just basic firearm safety.
It used to be.
But not only that, but it would also teach you how to use it. And then the CMP sends you home with, it used to be 1903 Springfields, then it went to M1 Garands, but they'll send you home with a firearm that our U.S. military has used. So you can keep that firearm at home. Why? In defense of life, liberty, and nation. Mm-hmm. So this is not something that's strange to the American experience. This is what defines us as Americans. And Mr. Newsom is twisting history and trying to use catchphrases and things like that to scare you away from the reality of what has made America, America, that defines our legacy and who we are as a culture and as a people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we have such, I got a point for Gavin in a second, but we have such a rich history of putting our country in a first position in our priorities. Our patriotism historically has been exceptionally high. It goes ups and downs. There's ebbs and flows. But the defense of our country, defense of our rights, defense of our freedoms is one of the hallmarks of an American psyche. It's one of the hallmarks of our American history. And I would honestly argue it's still fully alive. You're just not hearing about it quite as much as the other side because they have the loudest microphone. Quite honestly, that's my postulation. But I think it's still there. I think it's bigger and braver than it's ever been. I think it just needs a voice. I think it needs something to focus and really harness that energy of our patriotism. And that's, I mean, Tim, we've talked about, that's what we're trying to accomplish, right?
Absolutely.
The big thing that I want to drive home on this, and this is a big caveat, I'm not saying, and I know Tim isn't either, that this is the preparation for war. We aren't Sparta. But just because you're preparing for something and you've taught the education and you have the experience doesn't mean you have to use it. But would you rather be in a position where your country is on the line and you have an entire civilization that has a foundation that is common across the board, setting you up for success and a better chance to defend your freedom? As Tim mentioned earlier, it's not like you're sitting there saying, okay, you're 18, go off to war and reinstitute the draft, do this, do that. It's not what we're saying. What we're saying is, should trouble come knocking, we have taken the preparation to preserve our freedoms as best as possible. And that goes to the devil dogs from the U.S. Marines in Belleau Wood in World War I. The Germans didn't know what to do, quite literally. We were engaging at 2 times what the other combatants were doing. It was incredible. That comes down to a shared common experience. And to go to what Gavin was saying, there's a very interesting tell that you're going to see a lot of these gun politicians, the good ones. The bad ones, no one really pays attention to them. In fact, even the left kind of ignores them, like the Sheila Jackson Lees or the Al Greens. No one really cares what they say because they're not good at it. The ones who are good at it know how to use dramatic pause for inflection. They're the ones that know how to emphasize certain words and put a pause between questionable statements. You just saw 2 clips from Gavin Newsom doing exactly that. He makes a ridiculous comparison to 1790 when our population was what? 300? 4 million? You know, comes with that arrogance, with that condescension. And this is a hallmark of a gun control. You will see that on the good ones. Obama used to do the same thing. Biden's not that great at it, to be honest with you. But I'm kind of getting off on a tangent. But anyway, that was kind of my point.
Biden has a hard time navigating stairs up to Air Force One. So
that you're not wrong, Tim. You're not wrong. And it's been a long 2 years.
It has. But folks, I think the point we want to drive home here is that our freedoms are uniquely American. What has set us apart from every other experiment, which has been carried out globally for thousands of years through governments, and governments are experiments. Some have been successful, others have failed. Most have failed. But what makes us unique is the fact that we have a Second Amendment, that we have a culture of being proud to be Americans, of viewing ourselves as a brother and sisterhood. And one of the reasons that American soldiers perform so well on the battlefield isn't just because of their skill with their weapons. That's part of the equation. But it's also a loyalty to a belief in freedom, a belief that America is exceptional, that we are that shining beacon of light in a world of darkness. And without that core fundamental belief system that people like Newsom would take away from us, because he's a globalist. He wants us all, the whole world, to be the same. I don't. I want us to be uniquely American, because that is what has allowed America to become the most powerful nation in the world, the most respected nation in the world, the most coveted nation in the world. And everybody wants to be our ally and nobody wants to be our enemy. And that's for good reason. And so we can maintain that through many different things, but the Second Amendment is absolutely critical to this entire discussion. Guys and gals, thank you for watching today's episode. We hope that you enjoyed the information that we've shared with you today. There's certainly plenty of good fodder in today's video to share with friends and family and other folks that you might want to have this discussion with. Show them the video clips of Gavin Newsom and what he's saying and his distortion of history. Because what we need to do is come together as a community, and we can push back against this. We can we haven't lost our country, not even close to it. We can reclaim everything that we feel that we're losing through the political process that our founding fathers have put in place. And that's what we hope to encourage you to do through our conversations here on Second Legacy. So again, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Pass this information around. Let other people know what we're talking about at Second Legacy. And until the next time, we'll talk to you then.